Ethan had never expected to find himself stranded on a strange alien planet. His spaceship had malfunctioned in deep space, and now he was lost. The crash had been rough, and when he finally regained consciousness, he found himself on a world unlike any he had ever seen. The sky was a strange purple hue, and towering plants covered the land. Huge, vibrant creatures moved through the thick grass. Everything felt different. Ethan's first instinct was to explore. He had no other choice. The ship was beyond repair, and all he had left was his backpack and a few supplies. He set out on foot, hoping to find some sort of civilization. As he walked, he noticed how quiet everything was, with only the distant calls of strange creatures breaking the silence. After a few hours, he saw something that made his heart race, a procession of beings walking towards him. They were unlike any humans he had ever seen. Tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight, their faces were smooth, and their eyes glowed faintly. They moved with purpose. And their leader, a woman, wore a crown made of what looked like silver vines. Ethan froze in place, not sure whether to approach or hide. But his curiosity got the better of him, and he stepped forward. The woman, who appeared to be the leader, turned to face him. Her gaze was intense and filled with authority. The others around her stopped as well, and the group studied Ethan with cautious eyes. "Who are you?" the woman demanded. Her voice was melodic yet firm. I'm Ethan," he stammered, trying to appear calm. "I'm a human from Earth. My ship crashed here." The woman's eyes narrowed. "A human?" She looked around at her companions. "We were not expecting your kind." Ethan realized that his presence was alarming to them. "I don't mean any harm," he quickly added, his hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "I'm just trying to find my way back." The woman's expression softened slightly, but she still appeared wary. "Come with me," she ordered. "We'll take you to our city." "You are not safe here alone." Ethan followed the group, unsure of what to expect. The alien city was unlike anything he had ever imagined. Towering structures made of smooth, shining materials rose up around him, with paths that seemed to glow softly underfoot. The people here moved with purpose, their eyes always on their surroundings, as though they were always aware of everything happening around them. As they walked, Ethan couldn't help but stare in awe at the beauty of the place. It was both ancient and advanced, with technology that seemed to hum just beneath the surface. There were no visible vehicles, yet the streets were clean. Everything seemed to run smoothly. The leader led Ethan into a grand building, its walls adorned with strange symbols that he didn't recognize. The inside was just as stunning, with high ceilings and intricate carvings on every surface. The air smelled faintly of flowers and something metallic, but it was pleasant. "You will stay here until we understand more about you," the leader said, her voice still firm. She gestured to a group of attendants, who took Ethan's bag and led him to a room. "Thank you," Ethan said, trying his best to show gratitude, but his mind was racing with questions. He had no idea who these beings were or what they wanted from him, but one thing was clear: they were not just any alien species. They were powerful. After a long, uneasy silence, Ethan finally spoke again. "What is your name?" he asked the woman. She studied him for a moment, as if deciding whether to tell him. "I am Princess Lyra," she replied. "I ruled this land." Ethan's eyes widened. He was in the presence of royalty, and it didn't take long for him to realize that he had probably made a big mistake by showing up uninvited. He had no idea what the customs were here, and he didn't want to upset the princess further. The attendants gave Ethan food, strange fruits and meats that he had never seen before. He ate cautiously, not wanting to offend anyone, but also not wanting to seem weak. The food was surprisingly good, with flavors that were unlike anything he had ever tasted on Earth. It was both sweet and savory, with a texture he couldn't quite place. Hours passed and Ethan's mind raced. What would happen next? Would they let him go? Would he ever make it back to Earth? As he lay in the bed provided for him, staring up at the unfamiliar ceiling, he heard a soft knock at the door. It was Princess Lyra. "I have decided to meet with you again," she said, her tone still cautious, but no longer as cold as before. Ethan stood up quickly, not wanting to show any signs of discomfort. "Of course, Your Highness," he said, trying to sound respectful, though. He still didn't fully understand the etiquette. Princess Lyra motioned for him to follow her. "Come," she said. "I will explain more about our customs and why your presence here is troubling." Ethan followed her, his curiosity growing. He had no idea what he had gotten himself into, but something told him that this was only the beginning of a strange and dangerous adventure. Ethan followed Princess Lyra through the grand hallways, his mind still racing with questions. Everything around him was so different from what he was used to. The walls were decorated with shimmering patterns that seemed to change when he looked away. The air was heavy with the scent of unfamiliar flowers, and the light from the windows was softer than anything he had ever seen on Earth. They reached a large chamber at the end of the hall. Inside, the room was lined with strange, smooth furniture and glowing symbols on the walls. The princess sat down on a throne-like seat, gesturing for Ethan to take a seat across from her. She didn't speak right away, her eyes still watching him carefully, as if she were sizing him up. Ethan hesitated for a moment before sitting down. He felt out of place, unsure of how to act in front of the princess. He had no idea what kind of customs these people had, and he didn't want to make any more mistakes. "I'm sorry," he finally said, his voice sincere. "I didn't mean to upset you earlier when I drank your blood. It wasn't intentional. I was delirious, and you drank my blood." "Human," Princess Lyra interrupted, her voice firm but controlled. "Do you understand what that means on my planet?" Ethan blinked. "I didn't know it was a big deal. Where I come from, blood doesn't have the same meaning." Lyra stood up suddenly, her eyes narrowing. "Blood is life on my planet. It is the essence of our being. To drink someone's blood without their permission is a grave offense. It is not something you can simply apologize for." Ethan's heart sank as he realized just how serious this was. "I didn't know," he said again, feeling the weight of the situation. "I swear I wasn't trying to harm you. It was an accident." Princess crossed her arms, still staring at him. "I do not know if I can trust your words," she said. "But what is done is done. You must understand the consequences." Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but Lyra raised a hand to silence him. "Drinking my blood is not just a violation of my personal space," she continued. "It is a violation of our entire society. On my planet, the act of drinking someone's blood can mean many things. It can signify a bond, a challenge, or even a claim to power. It is not something taken lightly." Ethan swallowed hard. He had no idea that his actions could have such a deep impact. He had just wanted to survive, nothing more. "I never meant to challenge you or take anything from you," he said, his voice pleading. "I just I was dying. I didn't know what to do." Lyra's eyes softened slightly, but her expression remained serious. "I see," she said. "You were in a state of confusion, and I was careless. I should have known better than to leave you in that condition. But now, you must be careful. The others will not see it as a simple mistake. They will want to use this to their advantage." Ethan furrowed his brow. "Who are the others who would want to use this against me?" The princess hesitated for a moment. Before answering, "My people," she said slowly, "are not united. There are factions, some of whom see power in every action. They will use your mistake as an excuse to challenge me." Ethan's mind raced. He had no idea what he had gotten himself into, but "I didn't mean anything by it," he said again.
What can I do to fix this?"
Lyra looked at him carefully. "There is nothing you can do to take back what happened," she said, her voice softer now. "But there may be a way for you to redeem yourself. You will have to prove your worth and show my people that you are not a threat. Only then can you earn back your freedom." Ethan didn't know what that would entail, but he knew he didn't want to make the situation worse. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said, his voice firm. "I just want to go home. I don't want to be a burden to you or anyone here." Lyra stood up again and walked to the window, her back to him. "This is more than just about you. You've crossed a line that goes beyond our personal interactions. If you want to leave this planet in peace, you will have to prove to my people that you are not a threat, that you can be trusted." Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of urgency in her words. Can I prove myself? Lyra turned to face him, her gaze sharp. You will have to fight, she said, her voice quiet but intense. Not just in battle, but in the court of public opinion. You must show them that you are more than just an outsider, more than a human who made a mistake. You must become someone they respect. Ethan didn't know what kind of battle he was about to face, but he knew he had no choice. He had to do this. I'll do what I can, he said, determination in his voice. Just tell me what I need to do. Lyra studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I will arrange for you to meet with the leaders of my people. You will have to prove yourself in front of them. Your actions will decide whether or not you stay here or if you're banished. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. This was no longer just about survival. It was about earning the trust of an entire people. He wasn't sure if he was ready for such a challenge, but there was no turning back now. I'll be ready, he said, his voice steady. I won't let you down. Princess Lyra gave him a small nod, her expression softening ever so slightly. We'll see, she said. For now, rest. Tomorrow, we begin. Ethan turned to leave, but Lyra stopped him with a final word. And human, remember this. Your actions have consequences. Don't forget the gravity of what you've done, Ethan nodded, his mind swirling with all the implications of his mistake. He had never imagined that one wrong move could change everything. But now it seemed that the only way out was through the very people he had unknowingly offended. The next morning, Ethan woke up early, his mind still racing from the conversation with Princess Lyra. He had been given a small room in the palace, a place that was simple but beautiful. The walls were made of smooth stone, and there was a large window that looked out onto a lush garden. The air outside smelled fresh, but it felt heavy with tension. Ethan had to prove himself today, but he had no idea how to begin. When he stepped out of his room, he was greeted by a few attendants who led him to the main hall. Princess Lyra was already waiting, her face serious. She motioned for him to sit. Today, you will meet the council, she said. They are the leaders of my people. They are the ones who will decide your fate. Ethan nodded. His heart was racing. The council? He had no idea what to expect, but he knew this was his chance to show that he was not a threat to the princess or her people. He didn't want to end up in a dungeon, or worse, be sent off to some unknown place. As they walked through the palace, Ethan noticed how different everything seemed from what he was used to. The architecture was beautiful, but strange. The buildings were tall, with smooth, flowing curves, almost like they were alive. The streets were quiet, but every now and then, he would catch glimpses of the alien people tall. Graceful beings with glowing eyes who moved with an elegance that made them seem otherworldly. They reached a large chamber, where a group of people were already gathered. The council members sat in a semicircle, their faces unreadable. Some were older, with long flowing robes and sharp eyes, while others were younger, their expressions curious but cautious. The room itself was grand, with tall columns that seemed to touch the sky. The air was heavy with a quiet energy, as though something important was about to happen. Sit, Lyra said, gesturing toward an empty space at the center of the room. Ethan sat down, trying his best to stay calm. His palms were sweaty, but he knew this was important. The council was the key to his future. They would decide whether he stayed or left. He had to show them that he was trustworthy, even though he had no idea what he was doing. Lyra stepped forward and addressed the council, her voice steady, but with an edge of authority. This is Ethan, she said. It's a human from Earth. He is the one who drank my blood. The council members exchanged glances. Ethan could feel their eyes on him, their expressions cold and calculating. Some looked disapproving, while others seemed more curious, as though they were trying to figure him out. We have heard of this act. One of the council members, an older woman with long silver hair, said, but we have not yet understood why it happened. Tell us, human, why did you do it? Ethan cleared his throat, trying to gather his thoughts. I didn't mean to, he began. It was an accident. I was hurt and I wasn't thinking. Clearly, I didn't know it was a big deal. The woman raised an eyebrow. You are a visitor on our planet, and yet you broke one of our most sacred customs. You understand the weight of your actions? Ethan nodded quickly. Understand. Now, I didn't know, but I'm not a threat. I just want to leave and get back to my people. Lyra stepped forward. Ethan may not understand our ways, but I believe he can learn. We must not judge him solely for one mistake. There was silence in the room as the council members exchanged more glances. Finally, a tall man with dark skin and glowing green eyes spoke up. Your words are convincing, but words are not enough. You must prove yourself. It's not just a matter of one mistake, it is a matter of respect. How can you earn that respect? Ethan felt a knot form in his stomach. He had known this wouldn't be easy, but he hadn't expected it to feel so difficult. I'll do whatever it takes, he said, his voice steady. I want to show you that I'm not here to cause harm. The council member nodded. You will face a trial. It is the only way to prove your worth. You must show us that you can be trusted, that you understand our customs, and that you are not just an outsider. Do you accept? Ethan didn't hesitate. Yes, I accept. Lyra watched him closely, her expression unreadable. She hadn't said much during the meeting, but Ethan could tell that this was as important to her as it was to him. Good, the council member said. Then we will begin the trial tomorrow. Prepare yourself. As they left the chamber, Lyra didn't speak for a while. Ethan walked beside her, feeling both nervous and determined. He had no idea what kind of trial awaited him, but he knew he had to do it. If he didn't, he would never get the chance to leave this place. Once they were alone, Lyra turned to him. You're brave, she said softly. I didn't think you would accept so easily. Ethan looked at her. What choice do I have? He replied. I want to get back to Earth. I just hope I can prove myself. She nodded, her face softening a little. Hope so too. My people are not easily convinced. But if you show them that you're worthy, there may be a chance for you. Ethan sighed. I've never been in a situation like this before. Back on Earth, I could always find a way out of things, but this is different. I don't know if I'm ready for whatever this trial will be. Lyra smiled slightly. No one is ready, but you have one thing that many do not. You have the ability to learn, to adapt. That may be the most important quality you have. Ethan looked at her, surprised. By her words, you really think so? Yes, but you must remember this is not just about you. It's about my people. If you fail, it will affect all of us. I felt the weight of her words. I understand. I'll do my best. Lyra's eyes softened again, and for a moment Ethan saw a glimpse of something else. In her perhaps trust, or maybe something more. Couldn't be sure, but it gave him hope. The next day the trial would begin. Ethan had no idea what to expect, but he knew he had to face it head on. This was his chance, and he couldn't afford to fail. The next morning, Ethan woke up early, his nerves on edge. He knew that today would be the day his fate would be decided. He had no idea what kind of trial awaited him, but he had to be ready for anything. He had been given a simple set of clothes to wear. It's more fitting for a visitor than for someone who had just committed a grave mistake. Princess Lyra appeared at his door shortly after he had finished preparing himself. She didn't say much as she entered, but the look in her eyes was enough to tell Ethan that this trial was not something to take lightly. Her gaze was serious, and there was a quiet tension in the air. You look nervous, she said, her voice softer than it had been the day before. Ethan smiled weakly. You think? He replied. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do today. Lyra gave him a small nod. The trial will not be easy. It is not just about proving your innocence or your good intentions. It is about showing that you understand our culture, our ways, and the value of our customs. You must prove that you belong here. Ethan nodded, his stomach turning in knots. He had no idea how he could possibly prove that he belonged. He was just a human from Earth, and everything about this world was so foreign to him. She led him through the palace once again, and this time the air felt different thick with anticipation. The palace corridors were more crowded now, with people moving in and out of rooms, their faces filled with curiosity. They knew something important was about to happen. and Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were all watching him. Finally, he reached the central courtyard, a large open space surrounded by tall, arching columns. At the center of the courtyard stood a raised platform, and surrounding it were members of the council, as well as a group of royal guards. The atmosphere was tense, and Ethan could feel the eyes of everyone on him. "You will be tested in 3 parts," Lyra explained. Standing beside him, each test will challenge a different aspect of who you are: your strength, your intelligence, and your ability to understand our values. Only if you succeed in all 3 will you earn your place here. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of tests?" he asked, his voice a little shaky. "You will see soon enough," Lyra replied, her tone distant, as though she were thinking of something else. She turned to the council members. "Let the trial begin." The first test was physical. 2 large, muscular aliens stepped forward. Towering over Ethan, they were members of the council's personal guard, and their eyes were filled with determination. Lyra gave a signal, and the guards advanced. Ethan had no time to think. Charged toward him, and without thinking, he did the only thing he could. He ran. The guards were fast, but Ethan had the advantage of surprise. He ducked and weaved through the courtyard, using every bit of agility he had to stay ahead of them. The guards were strong, and they knew how to fight, but Ethan's years of training on Earth had prepared him for this. It wasn't about strength, but about outsmarting his opponents for several minutes. Ethan darted around the courtyard, dodging their attacks and trying to stay 1 step ahead. The crowd watched in silence, their eyes glued to the action. Lyra stood with her arms crossed, observing Ethan closely. Finally, Ethan saw an opening. One of the guards lunged toward him, and in that instant Ethan sidestepped, sending the guard stumbling forward. Using his momentum, Ethan grabbed the guard's arm and twisted it behind his back, forcing him to the ground. The other guard hesitated for a moment, but Ethan was already on the move again, running toward the edge of the courtyard. He reached the wall where a large stone pillar stood. With a leap, he scaled it, climbing to the top with surprising speed. From his vantage point, he could see the entire courtyard. The guards were struggling to keep up, but they couldn't match his agility. He'd won the first test, not through brute force, but through speed and intelligence. When he finally dropped down from the pillar, the crowd erupted in applause. Ethan, breathing heavily, looked over at Lyra. She gave him a small, approving nod. But there was no time to celebrate. The next test was already starting. The second test was mental. The council members presented him with a puzzle, a complex set of shapes and symbols that seemed to twist and change as he looked at them. It was unlike any puzzle he had ever seen before, and he could feel the weight of the eyes on him as he tried to make sense of it. The symbols seemed to shift in his mind, playing tricks on him. He had to think fast or he would fail. He closed his eyes for a moment, focusing all his energy on the task. Slowly, the symbols started to make sense. There were patterns, sequences that followed a logical order. He could do this. With his mind focused, Ethan began to move the pieces into place. It took several minutes, but in the end, he completed the puzzle. The council members exchanged looks of surprise, but Lyra's expression remained calm. Ethan wasn't sure if that was a good sign or not. The final test was the hardest. The council placed him in front of a large, glowing stone, and Lyra explained that it would test his understanding of their culture. The stone, she told him, could show the truth of a person's heart. It would reveal their true intentions and desires. Ethan hesitated. He didn't know what would happen if he touched the stone. What if it revealed something about him that he wasn't ready to face? But there was no choice. He had to do it. He reached out and touched the stone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the stone began to glow brighter, and images appeared. Before him, flashes of moments from his life, his time on Earth, the mistakes he had made, and the things he had learned. It showed his fears, his regrets, but also his hopes for the future. The stone didn't reveal just the person he was, it showed who he could be. And for the first time since arriving on this planet, Ethan understood something important. He didn't have to be perfect. He just had to be willing to learn, to grow, to prove that he could be trusted. The stone's glow faded. Ethan looked up to see the council members watching him closely. Lyra stepped forward. "Ethan," she said softly, "you have completed the trials. You have shown that you are not just a visitor in our world. You have earned your place here." Ethan's heart swelled with relief. He had done it. But he knew this was just the beginning. There was still much to learn, much to prove. But for now, he had made it. He had earned the right to stay. After the trial, Ethan was given a few days to rest. He had proven himself in the tests, but his heart still raced with the thought of everything that had happened. His mind was still trying to piece together the alien world he had found himself in. His relationship with Princess Lyra had changed, but he wasn't sure in what way. She had seemed distant at times, and other times, there was a subtle kindness in her eyes that gave him hope. One evening, as the golden light from the setting sun filtered through the palace windows, Lyra came to see him. She appeared more relaxed than usual, her royal robes flowing around her as she entered the room. Her gaze met his, and for the first time, she didn't look at him like an outsider or a mistake. "Ethan," she said softly, sitting beside him, "you did well in the trial. You've earned the respect of the council. But there is more you need to understand." Ethan nodded, his eyes locked onto hers. "I'm still trying to make sense of everything here. It's a lot to take in." Lyra smiled faintly. "I know it must be difficult. This world, our customs, they are not like yours. But there is something you need to know, something that could change everything." Ethan felt a wave of confusion wash over him. "What is it?" Lyra hesitated for a moment, as if she were deciding whether to share the truth. "You must understand that the blood you drank, it's not just any blood. My blood holds power, not just physical power, but something more." Ethan's brow furrowed. "What do you mean by power?" She looked around, as though making sure no one else could hear them. "On my planet, blood is sacred. It is the life force of our people. But for some of us, our blood is different. My blood, ... It holds an ancient power. A power that can change the course of this world." Ethan's eyes widened as he listened, trying to process her words. "Are you saying my drinking your blood?" "Yes," she interrupted. "It wasn't just an accident. When you drank my blood, it wasn't just a violation of our customs. It connected you to me in a way that no one else could understand. You have now gained access to a power you may not be ready for." Ethan sat back, stunned. "I didn't know." "I never meant to, I know," Lyra said quickly. "I know you didn't intend for this. But the fact remains, the bond has been formed. You are no longer just an outsider. You are connected to me, in a way that no one else is. And that could be dangerous, both for you and for me." Ethan's heart was racing now. But why? "Why didn't you tell me about this before?" Lyra looked at him, her eyes dark with concern. "Because I didn't know if I could trust you. The power my blood holds is not just a gift, it is a weapon. And if it falls into the wrong hands, it could destroy everything. You must understand the responsibility that comes with this. There are people who would kill for the power in my blood." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to keep his thoughts in order. "So what do I do now? I never asked for this. I just wanted to survive and go home." Lyra's gaze softened. "I know, and I'm not asking you to take on any responsibility. But you must understand, there are those in my court who know about the power my blood holds. They would use you as a pawn in their schemes, or worse, they would try to control you." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "So what do you want from me?" "I want you to stay close," she said, her voice low. "Need your help, Ethan. You have proven yourself capable in the trials. But now, you need to prove your loyalty. You need to show me that you can be trusted with what you know." Ethan looked into her eyes and saw the weight of her words. He knew that he couldn't turn back now. He was already deeper into this than he had ever expected. But he also knew that if he walked away now, he might never get the chance to leave this place. "I'll help you," Ethan said quietly. "But you have to promise me that I won't be used as a pawn in your politics." Lyra smiled faintly, though there was still a trace of sadness in her expression. "I promise. But the road ahead will not be easy. There are those who will try to manipulate you, just as they've tried to manipulate me. And if we are to keep this secret, we must be careful who we trust." Ethan nodded. "I can handle it. But what happens now? What do we do next?" Lyra stood up and walked over to the window, her expression distant. "We prepare. There are enemies within my court, people who seek to use my blood for their own gain. We must find a way to stop them before they can make a move." Ethan followed her, standing beside her at the window. "What do you want me to do?" Lyra turned to him, her face more serious than ever. "You have a part to play in this, Ethan. Whether you like it or not, you are now tied to me and my world. That means you will be a target. But it also means that you have the power to help me change the future of my people." Ethan took a deep breath, the weight of the situation settling on him. Had no idea what kind of power he was connected to now, but he knew that Lyra was right. His actions had consequences both for himself and for the people he had come to care about. As the two of them stood in silence, Ethan made a decision. He would help Lyra, not because of the power in her blood, but because he couldn't turn his back on the people who had shown him kindness. They were fighting for their future, and now so was he. The days after Ethan's conversation with Princess Lyra were filled with preparation. He knew the stakes were higher now. His actions had set a course for his future on this strange planet, one that was full of political intrigue and danger. What he had once seen as a simple mistake, an accident, was now something that bound him to Lyra and her world. Lyra had made it clear he wasn't just a visitor anymore. The bond between them was real, and it was dangerous. He had no choice but to follow her lead, at least for now. Ethan knew that he needed to gain the trust of those around him if he wanted to survive here. The princess had promised to help him, but he understood that there were forces at play that he couldn't yet comprehend. Lyra had begun to share more about her world with him. The more she spoke, the more Ethan realized how much he had to learn. The planet was beautiful, but it was also fragile. Its people, once united, had split into factions that fought for control. The royal bloodline, especially Lyra's, held the key to peace and order. And now, that blood had connected Ethan to her in ways neither of them fully understood. One afternoon, after Lyra had finished with her royal duties, she took Ethan to a quiet garden near the palace. The garden was lush with strange plants and flowers that glowed softly under the sun. The air was cool, and there was a peaceful silence. It's broken only by the soft hum of the planet's natural energy. "I wanted to show you this place," Lyra said, gesturing to the vibrant surroundings. "It's where I come to think, away from the palace, away from the politics." Ethan followed her into the garden, looking around at the unfamiliar flora. It was beautiful in a way that reminded him of Earth, yet still completely alien. He sat on a stone bench, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face. "I'm starting to understand why you like it here," he said, breathing in the fresh air. "It's peaceful." Lyra smiled softly, but her eyes seemed distant. "Yes, it is. But even here, there is danger. My people are divided, and that division has weakened us. If we do not act soon, those who seek power will tear everything apart." "Tea?" Ethan watched her carefully. He had noticed the sadness in her eyes ever since their conversation about her blood's power. It was clear that the weight of the situation was taking its toll on her. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice serious. Lyra turned to him, her gaze sharp but also filled with a hint of uncertainty. "We prepare for what is coming. My enemies are patient, and they will not strike until they are sure of their victory. But I will not wait. I will act first." Ethan looked at her, trying to understand the gravity of her words. "But how do we stop them? If they're waiting for the right moment, we have to be ready for anything." Lyra nodded. "You are right. We need to make allies. There are factions that support me, but they are scattered. If we can unite them, we can stand against those who would use my blood for their own gain." Ethan thought about it for a moment. "So we need to find these factions, gain their trust." "Exactly," Lyra replied. "We need to act quickly. The longer we wait, the harder it will be to unite the people." Ethan stood up, his mind working fast. "I've never been part of anything like this. I've always been on my own. But now it feels like everything has changed." Lyra looked at him, her expression softening. It has, hasn't it? You are part of this now, whether you want to be or not. But you are not alone. We will face this together. The words caught Ethan off guard. He had always felt like an outsider, a stranger in a foreign land. But hearing Lyra say those words made him feel like he was part of something bigger. He had never imagined that he would find himself in a position like this, caught in the politics of a distant world connected to a royal bloodline, forced to navigate the dangerous currents of power and trust. We'll do this, Ethan said firmly. I'll help you however I can. Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with a quiet determination. I know you will. ... But first, there is something else we must do. Ethan raised an eyebrow. What is it? Lyra reached into her robes and pulled out a small, glowing object. It was a pendant, shaped like a symbol he had seen before, the same symbol that adorned the palace walls. She held it out to him. This is the key to the meeting, she explained. It will grant you access to the leaders of the factions who support me. But it also marks you as someone connected to my bloodline. They will respect you because of it, but they will also test you. Ethan took the pendant from her, feeling the weight of it in his hand. It was small, but it felt important. As he held it, he could almost feel the power in it, the connection to Lyra's blood. He knew that. This wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of everything that was at stake. Thank you, said his voice steady. I'll wear it with honor. Lyra smiled slightly, a rare expression of warmth. Good. Now, we have work to do. The next few days were filled with intense planning. Lyra introduced Ethan to key allies, leaders of factions who had remained loyal to her family, despite the political turmoil. These were the people who held the real power on the planet, and they were not easily swayed. Ethan quickly learned that the palace politics were just as dangerous as the physical trials he had faced. The leaders were cautious, always watching each other, and every word was weighed carefully. It wasn't just about loyalty, it was about survival. As they traveled to meet with each faction, Ethan realized how much he had grown. He wasn't the same person who had crash-landed on this planet weeks ago. He had learned to navigate these politics, to understand the subtleties of power. And he was beginning to understand Lyra more deeply, too. She was not just a princess, she was a leader, burdened by the weight of her people's future. The more time they spent together, the more Ethan began to respect her. She was strong, intelligent, and driven by a deep love for her people. But even so, Ethan could see the fear in her eyes at times. She was walking a fine line in every decision she made could lead to either victory or disaster.